This is an introduction to inmate property forms. Here you're going to figure out how to fill out the forms correctly so that way there are no complications later on. This first form is the inmate property inventory form. You do this every time that you inventory inmate property. Now the top of the form here is the header. This is your document number. This is required for multiple things. For the most part, this is where we will cross-reference on other documents as well as in UDACA. This is where you would indicate where the inventory is taking place. So here you check the appropriate box, whether it was done here at USCF or CUCF, or if it was done at an inmate placement program facility or other, such as one of the community correctional facilities. Then here is where you put the inmate name. Now, of course, you're going to do last name first, first name last. This is the standard format for all inmate documentation. Be sure to provide the inmate number. This is key. Make sure that everything is legible. Now, the next section is the inmate location area. Now, here's where you'd put where the inmate is moving to if they are going anywhere. Now, you can be pretty liberal or general with this information. If you don't know exactly where they're going, you can put just their housing, or you can put this facility if you don't know otherwise. So you can use, say, Bear 1, or CUCF, or IPP, or even if they've gone on parole. But the front section will always be filled out. This is where the inmate inventory is taking place. If you are doing a large event with all other inmates getting their inventories taken, you would want to add additional information, such as section, cell, and bed number. This right here is the date and time that you would be filling out the inmate inventory. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, if you need to use multiple pages, this is where you would differentiate that. So this would be example, page 1 of 3. Make sure that you put that this is pages, not bags of inventory. This section here is for the prison issue items. This is the laundry stuff that we give to the inmates. It does not belong to them. It is actually property of the state. So here you can tell that they have a number right next to each individual item. That is how much they are allowed to have. Now, you'll see here that on socks it says 6. They're allowed 7. We're assuming that your inmate is fully clothed when you're doing the inventory, as shown right here. This next section is where you would be doing the majority of your accounting of the inmate property. This first section here is for the IPP matrix items. What does that mean? IPP matrix is the items that are able to transfer with an inmate when going on transport. So if they are going to a different facility, or if they are going to even a county jail, these are items that are going to be able to be transported with them. They are only allowed one pin bag when they are going on transportation. Now here, you can see the individual item, and there is an apostrophe and a number inside of those apostrophes, or parentheses rather. The parentheses number there is the maximum amount that they can carry with them in transport. This has nothing to do with when they are being tallied when they are still in their housing. This next section is non-IPP transfer property. This cannot go with an inmate if they are being transferred to a different facility. This is just for logistics and also safety issue items. And then this next section is blank, where you can put several miscellaneous items or items that have been differentiated from the rest, whether it be items that have been confiscated or need to go on disposition, etc. Now the white column is where you would tally the inmate's property and their appropriate values for each individual category. For example, we got cup lid and sweatshirt here. If I had 2 cups, I would put 2 in the white section. If I had 5 sweatshirts, I'd put 5 in the white section next to sweatshirts. And this gray column is where we would put the property code. Now the property code dictates what's going to happen to the property after the inventory has concluded. So you'd put I if the items get returned to the inmate. So if you concluded the inventory and they get all these items back, that would be indicated by I. N is for not found. This is for items that we know that we've issued to them, but we could not find them, such as a coat. They found no coat, we'd put N next to those items. P is for returned to property. This is stuff that they're able to have, but for some reasons they could not go with the inmate, whether they were transported to a different section or facility and they had property that needed to follow them. For example, if an inmate is transferred from Gunnison to here, the Salt Lake City location, they would have only one pin bag that they can take with them. The second pin bag would have to follow them. That would be sent to the facility's property section. D is for disposition. This is stuff that they can have normally, but for reasons they cannot keep with them inside. Items over matrix or items lost due to privilege levels, etc. The inmate can place these on disposition and have it picked up by a person of their choosing on a disposition form, or they can choose to mail it out and pay for postage. C is for confiscation. These are items that are contraband and the inmate cannot have. And then you would put these on the appropriate PR1 form and a case number would then be generated. The code definitions can be found here at the bottom of the form. Now back in our blank section here is where we can differentiate the items that had been placed on either disposition or had been placed to property or placed on confiscation. So if an inmate has more than one item and some of that needs to be differentiated as to whether it went on to disposition or was confiscated, you can place those items here. This next section is where we need our signatures. Now here we have our officer signature and officer witness signature. Having two officers involved in an inventory reduces the chance of any errors and also increases the likelihood of things getting caught as far as any contraband or otherwise. Having two eyes is always better than one. This is where the inmate will sign and verify that all the information on this inventory is correct. If the inmate refuses to sign, you can indicate it by writing "refuse to sign" on the inmate signature line. The inmate is not available to sign, leave it blank. Having the inmate sign the inventory is ideal, but not required if the inmate is not available or uncooperative. Now the section at the very bottom of the form is the received receipt. This is where they sign if they've received property, either coming from IPP or being returned to them from the property unit from a different section. The inmate needs to sign here, as well as the witnessing staff, and it needs to be dated. Then down at the bottom here is the distribution key for this form. This form is in a triplicate carbon copy. The white form stays with the property or goes to the property section. The yellow is for housing purposes, and the pink is the inmate copy. Now this is the Utah Department of Corrections property disposition or property release form. This is the form that needs to be filled out if the inmate property can no longer be stored with the inmate inside his cell. This is stuff that's usually over matrix or stuff that they can no longer have due to loss of privilege levels. This is stuff that is theirs, but for reasons they can't keep it with them. This is the header of the property release disposition form. On the top right is the document number. This is used to cross-reference on other documentation and also for logging into UDACA. Here you can click or tick release for items that can be reclaimed. This is usually just used for legal documentation, just items that the inmate typically will need access to at a later time. For the most part, everything's going to be placed on disposition, not reclaimable. For the inmate's name here, again, last name first, first name last, offender number, and the current housing unit when the inmate's property is being put on disposition. Here you can cross-reference an inventory or confiscation form number for any related confiscations or inventories. Now here is where you would put a brief description of the articles to be released. This is where you would describe all the items that are being placed on disposition. Don't need to be precise, but you do need to be accurate enough. Now we'll cover the middle of the property disposition form. So this is the date of notification. This is the date that the form was created. And then the action date will be 30 days from that day. It is important that all property be mailed or picked up from the institution for property that's been placed on disposition. They have 30 days to do so. Failure to act on their part will result in items being subject to donation or destruction. Here's the inmate signature field. The inmate will need to sign this for this to be a valid document. If the inmate is not available to sign, you will send this form to property and we will find where they're currently at and give them the opportunity to sign this document. The date for the inmate's signature is to be placed right here. This is where the inmate would designate a person to pick up their property. Here they will place their name, and this is checked against their ID. If they sign anyone, then anyone can pick up their property. Just to let the inmate know that anyone can pick up their property. If the inmate wants to donate their property, they can do so by denoting here. But by marking in this space with either a yes or an X or a check mark, they're indicating that they intend to have their property donated immediately and forgo the 30-day process. Here is where the unit captain designee approval signature would be. This is the officer signature section. The officer will need to sign here, date here, and also designate the unit that they're in right here. Now this section of the form would be signed by the inmate designee. The rest is filled out by the property unit. Please do not sign down in this section. This next section of the form is to be filled out if the inmate is intending to have their property mailed out. If they're mailing, they need to give us a name, a address, and a city, state, and zip code. Note that the inmate assumes all liability for items requested to be mailed out if not certified or insured. If they are mailing out their items, they will need to pay for the postage. Hence, they will need to have a money transfer signed right here. Now, all money transfers need to be witnessed by an officer. That officer witness signature and name would be placed right here. Also be sure to include your EIN number. This is not your post ID. Now the distribution code for this form, which is also in carbon copy triplicate, is right here. The white copy stays with the dispositioned property. The pink copy goes to the inmate. The yellow copy does not go to housing. It will actually go to the inmate's designee. So be sure to keep the white and yellow copies together when placing into the appropriate section in your property cage.